Zach Robinson. He is the GIS developer for San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, where he supports initiatives in enterprise GIS and geospatial application development. His most recent work has focused on the implementation of ArcGIS Indoors across the PUC's different facilities to better streamline facilities management and employee workspace utilization. He enjoys creating unique solutions to solve complicated spatial problems. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Zach.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Zach. As was said, I'm a GIS developer for the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, specifically in our IT department. Could go to the next slide. And next slide. Okay, so just a brief overview of the SFPUC. We are more commonly known as the Water, Power, Sewer Department in the city of San Francisco, but we really supply services to much of the region. In terms of water, we deliver high quality drinking water to 2.7 million Bay Area residents, stemming from the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. Power, we supply renewable hydro and solar power to all of our solar facilities, and also residents in San Francisco who adopt to use clean power. Sewer, we treat and manage wastewater and stormwater, protecting the bay. So shown on the right there, we have Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, where our water is coming from. We have the Moccasin Power Plant shown below that, and then one of our sewer treatment plants, the Oceanside treatment plant. And then in terms of people in our organization, we have about 3,000 employees across San Francisco and our regional facilities, which is multiple counties. And our headquarters is in San Francisco, next to City Hall. An image of that building is shown there. It's a LEED Platinum building, 13 floors for the PUC. And that building is kind of what spurred this movement to utilize ArcGIS Indoors. If you could go to the next slide. Okay, so just a brief overview of the context and the challenge that we faced. The overarching question that we were trying to answer was pretty simple, but it was very complex to answer, which is who sits where. That knowledge of who sits where across our building and multiple facilities was not centralized. We had multiple maps for each floor that were maintained by different divisions and groups. There was no central location, no database for keeping track of who sits where. Like I said, we have dozens of offices across multiple counties, and just in our headquarters building alone, we have about 1,000 people working in that building. So the challenge was, how do we take all of these disparate data sources from paper floor plans, CAD engineering drawings, spreadsheets, and how do we merge those together into a single system, and ultimately arrive at a place where we could see a live view of occupancy and availability. Because everything was previously updated manually, there were many errors, and there was often a pretty big lag in when information was updated. Some groups were better at updating their floor plans than other groups, and the goal was to have a system where that was all kept on the same page. And then a bigger thing we were trying to accomplish too was San Francisco, under our most recent mayor, Daniel Lurie, there was a mandate that all city employees were to return to the office 4 days a week. So we had this added challenge of we needed to make sure that we could accommodate that after many years of hybrid and remote work. Next slide, please. So some of the questions we were trying to answer. Who sits where? Which divisions are using which spaces? Where can I, as an employee, book a hotel desk when I need to go into the office? For our management staff, how many staff are in the building today who are booking hotels? Do we have enough space to fit everyone? Again, that kind of goes back to the 4-day-a-week mandate. There were concerns that maybe we would have trouble fitting everyone in the building. And we needed a system that would really help us accurately answer that question and allow us to model for future growth, which is that last question there. How can we prepare for future growth? Next slide, please. Okay, so vision and goals. The goal was to digitize and automate space management with GIS. Pretty seemingly simple goal, but one that took over a year to implement because the goal is simple, but the execution was actually quite complex. And a pretty high-level summary of what it took to do that was to centralize our workspace data. So that meant taking the dozens of floor plans, the CAD engineering drawings, and turning it into usable GIS data so that we had GIS features for every desk, workspace, conference room in the building, in addition to all of the other attributes like doors and walls, so that when users look at the map, they can quickly orient themselves similar to like looking at a mall kiosk. They can look at the building and say, okay, this makes sense. This is where I am in the building, and this is where I sit or where I can reserve a space to sit. So we needed to integrate HR data because, like any organization, people are joining the organization or leaving the organization. And we needed a way to automate that as much as possible so that we weren't just implementing this new system, but then having to keep it all up to date manually. Also, we wanted to automate updating and reporting. We wanted to provide dashboards and applications to the executive team so that they could see a high-level view of how their space was being utilized, which really helps plan for future growth. And then one of the bigger goals, and something we've transitioned to within the past few months, is self-service maps and dashboards. So, the GIS group, we set up this product and this solution, but the goal was never that the GIS group would maintain it forever. The goal was to transition it over to our facilities management division. And in order to do that, we had to make sure we developed a system that was usable by folks who were not familiar with GIS. And ArcGIS Indoors allowed us to do that. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is ArcGIS Indoors? ArcGIS Indoors is a very wide-reaching product and set of applications and data models. It kind of focuses on 4 core areas: resource planning, allocation, accessibility, and utilization of space; safety and security to help with continuity planning, equipment inspection, event response; to asset maintenance. So ArcGIS Indoors can be coupled with BIM, data modeling, real-time tracking, problem reporting, and then wayfinding, allowing folks to see on the map where they're going, and even if they were to open it on a mobile device to get directions through a building or through a space. And where we're at in this project is really just focusing on the resource planning. We have, some additional phases that are coming with ArcGIS Indoor that we'll get to the other spots, but what we focused on so far is resource planning, and I'll go through some of that. Next slide, please. Okay, so implementation overview. I went over this a little bit, but I'll just kind of spend a little bit more time on what that looks like. So the first step was digitizing CAD data. This was probably the most time intensive of the work. And ultimately, because our CAD data was very outdated, it took a lot of manual digitizing and tracing of CAD data and PDFs. So that involved me taking a PDF or CAD features and turning that into GIS data, points, lines, and polygons. And then once we have our data, we had to make sure to adhere to the ArcGIS Indoors information model, which kind of has a top-down approach from sites. So one site might have multiple facilities. For example, our Moccasin site up near Yosemite has, I believe, 20, more than 20 facilities at that site, but they're all linked to the parent site. And then within each facility, there's levels. So our headquarters building has 13 levels, and ArcGIS Indoors allows you to navigate between those different levels. And then the most fine-grained item is units. So for every cubicle, for every office, for every conference room, there's an individual feature in GIS referencing that unit. Once we had the data in the information model, we published that data to Portal, and then we configured the suite of ArcGIS Indoors web applications, which include Space Planner to allow us to assign staff to specific spaces, set restrictions on who can reserve which spaces. The floor plan editor, this is a tool to allow staff to edit CAD data directly within a web application. So let's say the layout of a floor changed and there was some construction done. The floor plan editor is a web application which pretty easily allows staff to go in and draw new walls, place new doors, place new desks without needing to use any desktop software. And then finally, the Indoors Viewer. This is the application that allows our users to see the data and book their hotel workspaces. We then needed to train our users and finally implement. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an example of the Space Planner application. I did have to truncate some of this to make sure that we were not showing employee information. So all of the blue squares there on the map, those are dedicated cubicles and offices that normally would have an employee's name on them. But you'll see that this floor, the 11th floor, has a variety of uses. We have dedicated spaces in blue. We have hoteling spaces in green. We have conference rooms in orange. Non-usable spaces like bathrooms in gray, and then vacant spaces shown in red. Next slide, please. So how does the Space Planner work? It's really powerful and it's really simple. What it allows us to do is facility staff can navigate to this application. They get an email report every week based on an automated process we set up that lets them know when there's new staff being onboarded. They can then go into Space Planner, find the space where the staff is going to be assigned to, and then they can just choose, is this unoccupied space going to be assigned to a person? Is it going to be a hotel, or is it going to be a meeting room? And the application is pretty lightweight and really great at quickly allowing you to move staff around and also model different versions of a space plan. ArcGIS Indoors utilizes branch versioning and ArcGIS Enterprise. So we could have, multiple versions of a single plan, and multiple staff can be working in their own versions of a plan, and then those versions can be merged together, reconciled, and posted. Next slide, please. Okay, so what does it look like for our end users? This is the Indoors Viewer application. This is an example of the third floor in our building. which only has a few hoteling spaces on this specific floor, but you'll see those highlighted in green. And what this application allows is, let's say I know that I need to reserve a desk because I'm going to come into the office tomorrow. I can go to this application either on the internet, on my desktop or on my phone, and then I can choose the workspace I want to book and reserve that workspace. Next slide, please. This is an example of what that workflow looks like within the application. It's pretty great. It allows us to set up restrictions on how many days in advance we want our staff to be able to book. So, for example, we have restriction that you can only book a workspace up to 30 days in advance. Within the space planner, the previous application that was shown, we can also set restrictions on specific hotel areas. So for example, we have a few floors in our building that are access restricted. So we need to make sure that only staff with the ability to access those floors can actually reserve those workspaces. The end users themselves don't need to worry about that. They would just go to this application, and because they're signed in using Active Directory in our ArcGIS Enterprise, it knows who they are, it knows what department they work for, and if there's any restrictions. It will also allow users to filter by amenities. So for all of our workspaces across our facilities, we keep information on if a particular workspace has features like dual monitors, laptop docking station, or sit-stand desks. And users in the Workspace reservation application can filter by those amenities to reserve the space that fits their needs. Next slide, please. This is a brief example of a reporting dashboard that's set up for our executive team. It allows the executive team to see day by day, floor by floor, which spaces are being utilized and which spaces aren't being utilized. And this allows them to really efficiently make some data-driven decisions on, do we need to open up more hoteling on a certain floor? Or do we have hotel space that is being underutilized and could be used for a different purpose? Next slide, please. Just another example of some reporting. So we can see trends of which days of the week are most common to be booked across our facilities, and we can see projected future bookings as well. Next slide. Okay, so how do we keep data current? This, along with digitizing the CAD data, this was probably the next most time-intensive work that was set up because we wanted to make sure that this system was as automated as possible. Like I said, organizations aren't static. There's new employees, there's separations. One employee might work at a headquarter building, but then get transferred to a different building. And we need to make sure that that gets reflected in the system so that they can book the proper spaces, so that they're assigned to the proper facilities, et cetera. So we use ArcGIS Notebook to automate this process. ArcGIS Notebook within ArcGIS Enterprise. And every week we have an automated process that is running that pulls the latest employee database information from our HR system. It looks for changes, specifically if there's new employees, if there's separate employees, if there's transferred employees. And then, if there's new employees, it's going to automatically create a user account for them in ArcGIS Enterprise so that they can go in and book their workspace. If the employee has separated, it's going to go and delete that account from ArcGIS Enterprise so that we, aren't overusing our licenses. And then the final part of this whole automated procedure is sending email reports to stakeholders. So each week when this is run, a series of emails are sent to different facilities managers at different facilities, alerting them that there's either new employees, separate employees, or transferred employees, so that they can go into the space management system and make the required changes. Next slide, please. So, outcomes and benefits, the biggest one is there's now a single source of truth for where people sit. Our executive team was really helpful in completely eliminating the use of PDF maps. So there are no more PDF maps of floor plans being distributed around the building. Um, it's difficult to even print a map from these applications, which was, we set up by design. That way the data lives in these applications and it's the single source of truth. It's very easy to scale to new facilities. So as more and more of our facilities are starting to bring ArcGIS Indoors online, we have a system in place to deploy that pretty quickly. We take whatever CAD data or PDFs they can provide us. Once that's digitized, we just kind of fit it into the system. And because our HR system knows what building people work out, we can integrate them into our automated process. And then finally, we can really more easily answer space utilization questions without spending a lot of work. So, the executive team is often coming to us with specific questions of, you know, how many people are using hoteling on the 7th floor? We can either show them the dashboard or we can really easily pull that report because all the data is in one place. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. And I will say, I apologize that I couldn't show, a live demo or a video of these applications. They do have a lot of sensitive employee information, but hopefully I was able to give enough of an overview. So yeah, happy to take any questions if there are any.
And then normally some of the conference room, we need to have like setup time and clean up time. And some of the event we need to have like media present. And also some of the event we need security. So, and then also in, sometimes the room's been reserved, but it's been bumped because of other priority. So I don't know if we can add like customized feature to this tool.
Yeah, I think the first half of your question may have been cut off before the audio came in. Could you repeat the full question for me?
Yeah, so at the government center in Santa Clara County, we have
Mhm.
conferences, conference room that are like very highly utilized. So we have rooms that require setup time, cleanup time, and connecting to services like media services, security services, catering sometime. And then, in the second part of the question is like when we have a bump scenario happen, when like, let's say the board supervisor need the room immediately, then whatever the room has been reserved have to be bumped to another facility. And that happened, right? So it trigger a lot of like customized planning and everything. Is that something that this tool can handle?
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak fully to answer that question, but I will say that ArcGIS Indoors, when it comes to conference rooms, it allows for two different use cases. The first is all of the conference room booking is done through ArcGIS Indoors. The second is you can hook it up to your Microsoft suite to allow users to book via Outlook. So then a user could book on Outlook, and then it would go and show that space as reserved within ArcGIS Indoors. So we are still in the process of bringing in conference room reservations into this system, but we're looking at that Microsoft integration to help with that. And then, some of the other things you spoke about. I think it would take a little bit more research to figure out exactly if and how Indoors could help, deal with those specific issues.
Thank you. Zach, it looks like we have a question from online. I guess it's kind of a question on how easy is it to cancel the reservation? So I guess in your case, do you guys encounter any problems with staff when canceling or?
Yeah, so canceling is pretty much the same workflow as booking. You would go into the application either on your computer or on your phone, and then you, within we call the system DeskQuest, the workspace system. Within DeskQuest, you would see a list of your reservations. You could cancel the single occurrence, or if it's a repeating series, you could cancel the entire series. And then we also have set up an automated tool that sends an email to users every morning that they have a reservation booked, reminding them about the reservation with a link in the email to go in and either check into the reservation or cancel their reservation. So that can be set up as well.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. Zach, you mentioned that it is a labor-intensive work to convert from CAD file to GIS format. I'm just curious how long it took for you to convert like one floor, for example.
Sure. So I will say that it depends on how well your CAD data conforms to kind of the AEC construction data model, because ArcGIS Indoor does have a tool to directly import CAD data. And if the CAD data is set up how it expects it to be set up, that import can go really smoothly. Our CAD data was not. It was just very messy. It didn't conform to any model. Every floor had a different way of, showing their CAD data. So it really depended on the floor, but I think a basic estimate was it probably took about a day's worth of work for each floor, which meant, a lot of tracing and a lot of digitizing.